Capitalism has devoured every ounce of goodness in humanity, or even in
They're not doing anything. All they're wanting to do is have the right to believe in what they want to believe in. And so, and they send them checks every week. Like we have got volunteers, in other parts of the world that, are like literally being like tortured right now. They're using torture against them. Like, welcome back to Minds Unbound. Today, we're going to be diving deep into a topic that sounds like science fiction almost, but it is very real. The psychics arm race between the CIA and the KGB during the Cold War.
That's right. We're going to be talking about the massive funding that both agencies actually put towards researching psychic abilities, including remote viewing and using psychic spies, and what they hope to accomplish with these programs.
That's right. Um, So let's start with how all of this, basically began, which was in the 1970s. Basically, both the CIA and the KGB both were funneling enormous amounts of money, basically pouring it into all of this psychic research. The U.S. Government, they spent millions, if not billions, probably, on projects, like Project Stargate.
Right. And for the KGB, psychics were a national security tool. They believed in the power of psychic abilities to gather intelligence and even to influence or to control thoughts. They invested heavily into researching parapsychology.
Yeah. So why did the CIA and the KGB see such a need for psychic research, and why did they see it like as such a powerful weapon, for them to have? And I think a little bit of that is probably because of like the paranoia, due to the Cold War, where each side basically felt compelled to pursue, like whatever the other was doing, basically. So they were just basically trying to stay in competition with each other. And I do know that, like, after the Soviet Union, psychic research, the CIA, they did feel like, that they had to explore like these potential methods, in to avoid being, like outmatched or something by the CIA.
Right. Well, and that makes sense too, especially if psychic abilities were able to do what they had later found they were able to do. That would be a really big security threat. One of the most famous programs that we've talked about too was the Stargate project. It was designed originally to explore the potential of remote viewing, and there were CIA recruited psychics that they could to see if they could view locations or events from afar.
Right. Like one of those people actually was a Pat Price. Was a notable. It was one of the most notable remote viewers. He supposedly described, a Soviet military base. Um, and he described it in great detail without ever leaving the CIA's office. His results were like so impressive that they caught, the CIA's attention for sure.
Now, isn't he the one that was eventually recruited by the KGB and then left
Yeah.
them and then was found unalived
Hmm.
after?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Which most of them were, a lot of them were found that way, or they, mysteriously like leaped off of, bridges or wherever, after I guess after it had ran out, their use had ran out, I guess you could say.
Well, I think it would be a great time for us to explore a little bit more about how remote viewing works and how they were able to see distant locations or objects through what was known or as has become known as extrasensory perception.
Yeah, ESP.
Yeah, and then how credible these findings were. I know that one of the documentaries that we had been watching to research for this episode touched on, just the level of detail that went into what these people were able to see when they would use these psychic extrasensory perceptions to go into areas that were top secret, that no one even had the codes to these things, not even in some cases, the president themselves. And yet these people were able to, in great detail, basically show an exact replica of what was being able to be seen without really any explanation as to why they were able to see it, which is incredibly unsettling, but pretty amazing too. But I can understand sort of, why we would want to explore that because, how does that happen?
Right, exactly. Well, see, and and I think with a lot of that, exactly is that. So basically, how it works is that they're able. What they're doing is they're able to see inside different locations. So, like, here's an example. So, whenever I am doing my readings and things like that, which I mean, some people would say that they're different, between like, psychic ability, but they're really not. I mean, it is whether you're an empath or a psychic, whatever it is, it's all the same abilities. And basically, so when I'm doing like say for instance, when I'm doing my mediumship readings, when I mean, I'm seeing that inside the images and stuff is coming in, it's inside my mind's eyes where I'm seeing it, which is your Anya center. And it's it's the same way sort of with that, except for they're using like ESP and things like that. But at the same time, I mean, anybody that has any type of abilities, are using ESP. So, but they're basically, so they're seeing it, it's inside their head, but it's images they're getting. It's like a download, kind of like if you're downloading a movie or something, you're not downloading, it's downloading into your mind, basically.
Yeah, and I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in some of these cases, the remote viewer was only given like the longitude and latitude of some of these locations, and then we're asked to remote view it. I think even one of the remote viewers was able to describe the rings around, was it Jupiter, without ever even seeing it, and was able to accurately describe what those rings look like, what color they were, and everything, even before our satellites had gotten there. I wonder how they're able to do that. I do think that's very fascinating.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Another prominent example of a psychic was Ingo Swann. He also made contributions to the Stargate project.
Yeah. I'm trying to, no, I lost my place, dang it. Where's it at? Shoot, hang on.
We're on 25 to 35.
While the CIA, was cautious, and the KGB, they took another, they took it to a whole new level. They didn't just want information; they wanted to use psychics to influence or control people's thoughts, and even at long distances.
They believed in what's called psychotronics, and that's the idea that psychic energy could manipulate or disrupt the human mind. They even worked with scientists to create experiments to amplify psychic abilities, hoping to weaponize.
Right. And seeing, do what? Go ahead.
I was just saying, it sort of sounds like the X-Men.
Yeah, it does. Well, actually, and that's the thing, they did like so, with psychotronics and things like that. They also believed, like that they could use like psychokinesis and things like that, as well as like telekinesis and things like that. So I mean, it does kind of sound, like they're, like it's the X-Men or whatever, but it's basically so. It's where like they actually even experimented like with machines that supposedly would amplify psychic energy, and to target certain individuals, and there was even reports of psychics attempting to read like US politicians or military generals and stuff like that from there, over in where the KGB was at and stuff. And so, and they were basically, what they were trying to do was like to influence their decisions or to uncover like their into things like that.
So, what was the end game here? Why would these agencies keep funding programs that were so fringe?
Well, I think that what they were doing, I think they were chasing like any advantage that they could, basically, to get, no matter how strange it sounded, possibly. But then, over time, skepticism grew, and especially, it became difficult to replicate, the same results consistently. So,
It makes sense. Well, whether the programs were ultimately successful or not, touching on why the CIA eventually shut down its psychic programs in the 1990s, we could talk about how those projects were dismissed maybe too soon, especially with the types of results that they were finding and able to verify, even though they weren't consistently always able to get it. But it also makes me wonder if they were truly shut down, or if, like we've talked about, if maybe they were just given a different name.
Exactly. Yeah, because we know, I mean, we know that they did that, especially, with things like, say, with MK Ultra, they basically are still using MK Ultra today to program everybody, but they just changed the name. So I mean, it does make you wonder, did they not just go ahead and keep doing it and just saying that they didn't, um, or maybe they just maybe they felt like their money needed to, be spent, on some other, atrocious, experiment, I guess you could say.
Well, I feel like during the Cold War era, especially with the space race and all of those things going on, it was really a competition between the major power players to see, who could make these breakthroughs and weaponize these skills if they existed first, and then exploit them to the fit. I
Oh
guess
yeah,
also we should talk a little bit about the government's willingness to explore unconventional tools in warfare.
yeah, exactly. Because the point, the CIA and the KGB, they spent like millions investigating like psychic phenomena and stuff like that. There's not an exact number on it, but I do know that, like, the U.S. They ran Project Stargate, and that lasted between 1972 and 1995, and their funding actually exceeded $20 million. And that was just for that one project. And I know that they had several, like at least, 20 more before that, and then there was even similar projects. It's reportedly invested a substantial amount of money as well. And although it was never fully disclosed by either government, actually, exactly how much money that they did end up spending on it, but they were doing like research, like for espionage tools like ESP, as well as telekinesis.
Isn't that also too? Didn't the Stanford Research Institute get involved in this to sort of add credibility? Even with the project that Pat Price had been working on, I thought that was one of the other areas that they used to sort of verify these exits. Not unlike even what they showed on Ghostbusters, where Bill Murray is holding up the cards and asking them what they could see on the other side of it, just kind of as a visual representation of what that might look like for those who may not have explored any of these psychic avenues.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And they have, there was other different, things, like we had watched, on the Wi-Fi's, where they were basically, they went to that one location, that's what they were doing there. They were using that remote. She was a remote viewer. And then, and they said that they went, it was into a cave or something, and they basically started just like seeing all these different weird images and shapes and stuff, and then they seen like some kind of an entity there. Well, anyways, almost their entire team, I think they said that they were there with like 180 people, and I think they left with like 16 people was all that had made it out of there. And then lo and behold, her and I guess it's like what you would consider like her sidekick or something. Both of them ended up leaping off of, and she was a psychic spy for the KGB.
Yeah, I've got to say too, when I watched that part of the documentary from the Y Files, and they were describing what they found in that cave, I had this feeling come over me. I felt so sick and weighted down. Like it was even difficult for me to get through listening to it. Every single part, that as the story unfolded more and more, I just felt so nauseous, just incredibly
Mhm.
nauseous. And I don't know, almost like a humming in my head too at the same time. It really felt like it was true. And then as the story went on, at the end of it, he talks about how there's, the person who wrote that book, he wasn't even actually there that day that it happened. So I was so confused too. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so unsettled. And did it even, was it all just been sanitized and whitewashed, or did it really happen? Or yeah, it's very.
And when you remember on the Third Eye Spies, when we was watching it, I don't remember if you remember seeing that part, where they talked about the one girl, that she ended up like mysteriously she had like passed away in in that motel room, and basically like it was something they said it was like some kind of acid or something that,
Yeah.
and yeah, that was, I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, that's very scary. It
yeah.
makes it
And
it
see,
makes
and I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe she's the one that actually was the one that was trying to get to influence the US politician.
Right. Well, and we've touched on this movie before too. I don't know. I think you had said you hadn't seen it yet, but it was from the director Christopher Nolan, and it's called Inception. And that's where they use dreams to influence the leadership. So the corporations, which really rule the world because the global economy, is largely based on what happens in America, and therefore the corporations who run America, their decisions are very, very important to probably a lot of
Yeah,
key players in this world. It kind of makes sense that they would learn techniques to do things like that. And it really
true.
makes you wonder how much free will any of us have.
Right. That's absolutely true. Yeah. And it does make it, me kind of more, and then at the same time, I'm so, we talked about this a little bit yesterday, and everything when we was talking about, them, trying to do possibly, this whole one world government and everything like that, which it doesn't help when they got things like bricks and things like that. I mean, it kind of makes you have to stop and wonder, you have to ask yourself, well, and I mean, and let me just say, so this is not like the only time that any of our governments have spent blew money on nonsense like this kind of research. So, I mean, if you guys really know, I mean, like our government alone, the United States government literally is funding the Taliban. And so, I mean, and they send them checks every week. Like, I mean, like millions of dollars of your tax money to pay them. And what it's doing is it's paying for your own destruction. Because what do you think they're going to use those weapons for? Who do you think they're going to use them against? They're not going to use them against their own people or Russia or nobody else. They're going to use them against us, and they are probably. And and I strongly urge everybody to please and go and check out the Sean Ryan show for sure. I've got some episodes on there, and these are these are people that are in the resistance against the Taliban, and they have stated numerous times that that's what they're planning, and they said that what they're planning is will make 9/11 look like it was nothing. I mean, and that's terrifying because we know how bad 9/11. I mean, it was the worst thing that I had ever recalled seeing. Yeah, I was at school whenever it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, my husband was teaching at a school right outside of the Pentagon when it happened. So, because he lived right outside
Ew.
D.C. at that time, and he was only 19 miles away from where the impact happened.
Oh wow.
And he ended up moving away from DC as a result of that whole thing because of the fear. One of his students' fathers died in the Twin Towers. So
Yeah.
it
Oh,
definitely, I mean, where I was in Oregon when it happened, but where I worked was right across the street from a World Trade Center. So
oh
then,
wow.
everybody was so afraid of World Trade Centers at that point too. So yeah, just the fear that it created. And then to find out all these years later that it was likely just a plan.
Hmm.
They just wanted to demolish the buildings so that they could avoid an
Yeah.
audit potentially. So
Yeah.
that's really crazy. But not only are they funding the Taliban, they're funding the narcotics that are
Yeah.
infiltrating the entire planet and destroying us one
Yeah.
by one so that they can make all of their dirty money to pay for all of these
Mhm.
dirty programs. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot
I
to
mean,
do.
who do you think? I mean, who do you think funds China to send the freaking fentanyl over here? I mean, I mean, and people, still when I hear people say that they'll ask me all the time. They're like, "Who are you voting for?" I'm like, "I'm not voting for nobody because it doesn't matter, and they're all going to be crap because they usually are." And that's true. I mean, and I also wanted to talk. I don't know this is getting off of the psychic thing, but it's okay. But I did want to say, you know, we have got volunteers, in other parts of the world that are like literally being like tortured right now. They're using torture against them, like putting plastic bags over their heads and things like that, and keeping them away from their family. And it's like nobody even notices that this is even happening. Nobody except for us, as well as, that's not the only thing. I mean, look at all the missing children that's going, missing. around the world. I mean, 8 million children are missing a year and nobody seems to give a shit. And it's like, when do we get to, I mean, when did we become what I don't call us a civilization, because I do not feel like that we are. I don't think that we're a civilization at all, because I think that, you know, we are, I mean, if this is what civilizations behave like, then we shouldn't be a civilization. I mean, we should go, well, I mean, that's the truth, but we're not, because that's not how civilizations behave. You know, I would rather have a, a dog in there or whatever in the White House before I'd have to vote another politician in there. I mean that's no lie. I mean, because it's just we can't trust it. And it's not just our country, it's every country. I mean, these countries that our volunteers are being, tortured and stuff in, those countries don't even have the luxury of like things like freedom to believe in freedom to believe. Why should you have to have a freedom to believe in what you want to believe in?
Right.
Why? It's just insanity to me. I mean, it is. Like,
Control.
why do we have to be told that we can believe in whatever we want to believe in, or have faith in what we want to? Like, I mean, it just,
Well,
I don't know. I wish,
not to oversimplify it, but I have a 5-year-old, so I'm exposed to a lot of children's programs. And one of them, even though it's a simplistic view, it's a recent movie that came out from Disney. It's called Wish. And the premise of the movie, if you watch it, it's so brilliant how they word this, because they make it to where wishes are regulated. And the leader, he's protecting everyone by regulating their wishes, and he grants 14 of them a year. So he's super generous. And that's about one a month, right? And then the girl comes to him and says, but what about my grandfather's wish? It's harmless. And I don't even remember specifically what the wish was. It was super harmless. It seemed super harmless, but the leader said, but this sparks an idea that's dangerous. We don't know how the people are going to take this idea and what they're going to do with that idea. And once the population starts getting so big it's unmanageable, then those ideas, you can see where they could become dangerous if any idea was allowed to take root and grow into whatever you wanted it to be. What if it was cannibalism? So it's sort of difficult to understand, where is the moral fabric that we must adhere ourselves to stay within the scope of humanity, but then still also preserve our right to think and to have ideas and to be inspired and to express mistakes, even because if we can't have open dialogue, we can't solve problems. But then
Mhm.
at the same time, we don't want our open dialogue to be about how do we start a cult of cannibalism, as an example,
Right.
So it's
Yeah.
really tough. You have to guide a society to have a moral fabric so that they won't harm themselves and others, but then also give them the freedom to
Right.
create solutions that we can all benefit. So I don't envy
And
them.
that, I think that's where the problem lies, is that they didn't do that. It went all, about just to control, control, control. Let's control everything. And they didn't do that part. That was the part that they didn't do. They didn't do the whole, let them still think for themselves and stuff like that. Let them, and just, control the things, areas that we need to, or whatever. It wasn't that. It was like massive control, and like, no, you're not. If you can't do this and can't do that.
and 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 it's off the topic as well, but kind of not also. It's as though capitalism has devoured every ounce of goodness in humanity, or even in what it was possible to be, because it's just profit over everything. We just need money, 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 money. It doesn't matter. We'll use drugs, we'll sell kids,
Yeah.
endlessly, infinitely growing economy that's unsustainable. You can't hold on to any morality in an environment like that. You just can't, because your value system is so corrupted. It just really has to be demolished and started over. And I feel
Yeah.
like, I mean, I can't even imagine or fathom why our participants in Alatra, why they would be treated this way. They're
Mhm.
the purest souls who are out there trying to take their wish to the road, but it's a wish that will
Yeah.
take all of us forward, just not those capitalists. And I'm sure they're not
Yeah.
happy about that.
Yeah, and and that's me too. I sit there and I try to ask myself, I mean, like I didn't get very much sleep last night because I kept just thinking about that, and I kept thinking, that I had lost like all of my faith that I had whatsoever in humanity. Like I had zero faith in humanity, like before I joined the Creative Society. And then I joined them and I've met like so many amazing people. Like, I mean, I really have. And I'm trying to not cry. So, but I mean, I have like, I've met some of the most just people that's got the most hugest hearts, and they are all so sweet, and they're kind. You know, the second you go and message anybody or talk to anybody, you know, you're so, hey, you know, they meet you with just the most cheerful tones, and you know, they're so super kind, and so you know. When I think about that, you know, like what they're having to go through and things like that over in other countries and stuff, especially in the European part of the world, you know, it does. It breaks my heart because it's like, you know, why are you even they're not doing anything. All they're wanting to do is have the right to believe in what they want to believe in, you know. They just want to be able to they want a better world. I mean, how many you know, every cult, what I would consider to be a dangerous cult is somebody that's actually out there that are like, if they're trying to freaking sacrifice children to the devil, that would be a dangerous cult to me. But people that are trying to unite the world and trying to save the planet and humanity, I don't see why are we so dangerous, you know. And that's because they don't want, you know, because they don't want unity. They don't want things like that. And but it
Well, for
doesn't.
me
I mean,
too, I reached the point where I was just like, and this has been recent, like the last few weeks, where I've heard so much of this cult nonsense that to me, it just sounds stupid. Like someone coming up to me and telling me I'm a cartoon. Like it's just so ridiculous. And then I just immediately think to myself, okay, well, if that is a cult, then the whole world needs to be a freaking cult. I don't care because they have
yeah,
a system that will benefit everyone. And sometimes people are just too ignorant to know what's actually good for them. And,
yeah,
you know, it's going to take time, I guess, for that to happen because they have a hard time with adjusting and change. And we've all become so cynical and isolated and stuck in our echo chambers that we automatically think every new idea is going to hurt us. Like
hmm,
if it's you know, if it sounds even similar to unity, it must be communism. If it sounds like it has solutions, there's got to be an ulterior motive because that's how we've all been raised. That's all we've seen. Everyone will stab a knife in your back the second you turn around. In today's world, that's what we've let ourselves become. We have to take
yeah,
responsibility for that. We've all played a part in that. We really have.
hmm,
Every one of us every day going through life and just allowing this system to continue the way it does without saying something. Those
yeah,
people, the Alatra participants that are being persecuted, are the bravest that humanity knows. Because to be
hmm,
bringing something that's so pure, so inclusive, so well thought out, and for such a long period of time, for decades
hmm,
now, the persistence and the resilience that that demonstrates, and to be like you were just saying, having bags put over their head and tortured. I mean, that if it was, I mean, that would be enough to discourage evildoers or anyone from walking a path like that, and to have the same purity and intention to just persevere through that. What kind of person has that kind of strength and courage? You know, there aren't that many, I don't think.
the lottery, but the lottery participants definitely do, because I mean they do, you know, they still, you know, they get up, you know, I mean, but you know they're, you know, they even have to like when they go live, you know, I go live with the, you know, usually, you know, most usually every night, you know, or try to go live every night, you know, with like Lana and Svetlana and stuff like that, which it's not so controlled like there in their area, but they still have to, you know, because Europe has that whole thing, you know, but it's not. They have to be careful, you know, like on certain things, you know, but other participants are like, we had one of our participants, he come on to the live the other night, and he couldn't even turn on his microphone and talk because look, he didn't want to get, and I mean, that just made me feel so horrible for him because it's like, you know, and he's one of the ones that's in Slovakia, you know, and it's like, you know, like the fact that you can't, I mean, when will we get to the point where it's going to be that way in America, where they tell us, oh, you're not allowed to say this on the internet, you're not allowed to do this. I mean, because it's going, I mean, if people think that it's not going to happen here, it will happen. Because you may think that you're free, you may think you've got all these rights, but you're really not as free as you are, and you don't have as many rights as you think you do, because they just tell you have them, because so you do think you're free, but you're really not. If
We're
you really stopped and thought about it, you would realize you're not.
I feel like we are coercively controlled as a species, really. I would say as a
Mhm.
society, but it's not even regulated to just certain societies or civilizations. It's as a whole species. And to add to that, I've heard other participants even talk on the fact that they have to be out of the system to even have the freedom to speak. And to add to credibility to that, if I were still with my former position that I was in for the last decade, we were forced to sign massive NDAs. Every single employee in 2020 was forced to sign a massive NDA. So we couldn't even talk about all these things that we had been exposed to, like these catastrophes that were expected to arrive, this pandemic we were preparing for, that we all knew about, that, but if I was still with that company, I wouldn't be able to speak even now. So freedom of speech is what? You have to
Mhm.
basically cut yourself off from everything you need to survive in society in order to have any freedom of speech. And then once you have that freedom, how do you pay to get your voice out? You can't. So what
Mhm.
freedom do we
Yeah.
really have? We don't really have freedom. It's an illusion. The sooner we all wake up and realize that, the sooner we can actually solve the problem. I feel
Yeah.
like. I mean,
I
that's just
agree. No, I
uh
agree. You're absolutely right, for sure.
yeah, and if you'll notice, a lot of the participants that we do have with the Creative Society and Alatra, they're either, self-sustaining, or, they're self-employed, or they work for some type of, renewable outlet, something that
Yeah.
isn't connected directly to the system, because you will risk you'll be a social pariah. I mean, as soon as I started learning about this and realized that I had to say something, everyone around me, I mean, the only relative that we even have in this town completely excommunicated us because of,
Wow.
and she even believes in climate change, but it's just so different than what people are used to hearing and considering, that they can't
Mhm.
even, but I mean, and it's painful. It's painful, but you have to have the courage to walk through this. And if they can get through bags over their head, I can get through that. It's really nothing.
Yeah, I know, right? That's what
Yeah,
I said too.
that's terrifying. Yeah, yeah. But
But if we think about it, it's only a matter of time before they will eventually, people, and that's why I think people need to start seeing the bigger picture of things. People think that, well, because, oh, well, you're in America, it's not going to happen there. Don't say that it's not going to happen. I mean, I mean, if they see that if they see that it's a potential problem here in America, or and then more, I think the reason why, and this is just my personal opinion, I think that the reason why they've not really bothered the volunteers in America is because we have more volunteers in the European countries than we have here in America. And I think that that's why they've not messed with us. But as soon as the volunteers start to, grow here, then you better bet your ass they'll
we're
do us the
sort
same
of,
way as they do them too.
we're
Anybody
sort
that they're going to see as a problem.
yeah, yeah, I agree. We're sort of like the trailblazers for America, and I've heard it parroted several times, we need to have louder voices in America, because we don't seem to have a ton of it. So,
Mhm.
especially in areas where free thought or breaking away from the conventional social norms, even especially, I would say you're even more courageous than I am, because you're in an area where it's considered to be the Bible Belt, and I mean, I am too, sort of, but it's borderline, so it can kind of go either
Yeah,
way. But where you are, especially, you're going to have so much resistance from everyone.
I
They'll just
have.
automatically call you crazy, and it's just fighting
Mhm.
an uphill battle. There's so much more information these people have to bridge the gap to get to where they need to be, to understand that this is actually for their benefit and not for their detriment.
Mm, yeah, and I've tried to, yeah, and you're right, I have met, like, so much, so much, just like, "It's not in the Bible, Heather. That's not what the Bible says, Heather." And like, it is in the Bible, first of all. I mean, just so you know, it's right there at the very end chapter of the very end book of the Bible. If you go and read it, it's in there. Trust me. I mean, he does say, that he says that in the good book. But that's besides, turn your TV off and stop letting your mind be programmed with the bullshit that's coming across there, because that's all it is. And, stop reading in the books. Just stop, go outside and look at, just watch the weather, or watch. I mean, watch it with your eyes outside, not on the TV, and just and pay attention to things like that. Things that are going on with the weather and the climate. Do you think it? I mean, in all of my life, I'm 40 years. Or actually, I've just turned 41, and I've never seen the aurora. And this is not like, my son actually was going to take me to Alaska to see them whenever he got some money and stuff, because this is before all this stuff started happening. Now I don't even have to do that. I can just see them when the weather's right, but I know what's causing them too. And I know that what those mean. Those mean actually that we don't have oxygen. We're losing oxygen in our atmosphere, in case you geniuses don't know. So you have to be, but everybody else sees them as they're, oh my God, they're so spectacular, not even realizing the danger that they're causing us, which is, is that it's reducing the oxygen, as well as the health. People's been having health issues, like with their with their heart and things like that.
Yeah, it's
uh
so ironic. It seems almost like it's opposite. We introduce this new information and solutions, and we connect all the dots for everyone, and we are met with immediate skepticism. But when they see stuff coming from the sky, they'll run out and just welcome that and say, "Oh yeah, bring that on."
it could be a comment.
We don't need to research this at all. It's fine.
Mm-mm.
It's got to be good if it's coming from the sky,
Yep. Yeah. It could be a damn comet the size of the one that
right?
killed the dinosaurs, and they're like, "Oh my God, look at that comet!"
But don't
Until it
listen to the
spikes them.
scientists. No, don't listen to those. I did get
Yeah,
a
that's
couple
absolutely true.
I did get a couple of factoids to add too that might help to add to our conversation. One of them I
Sure.
wanted to mention. It was because I didn't even know this either. The Soviet project, they had in the Soviet, they had a project called Troop One. So it's Troop Dash One. And this actually focused on specifically on psychic training for elite soldiers. And they taught them to use mental influence as part of their military duty. Those programs were
Oh,
classified for years, but they were revealed in the post Cold War era as part of Russia's broader psychological operations. So it sort of does
wow.
lend credibility. I kind of think of those Russians as some pretty smart people. The
Oh,
more,
wow, that's very interesting, though. I
yeah,
mean, that
yes,
is very interesting.
so it's like it was an accompaniment. And I watched this other brief video this morning too, just randomly, and it was a former CIA agent talking about how they specifically recruited people who had anxiety because that particular trait makes you automatically more aware of your environment, and it makes you automatically
Uh,
more paranoid. And they use those skills specifically. They teach them how to shut out the outside world, how to shrink their world to where they're focused on only things that they can control. So they like manipulate and use that anxiety. It's almost like a superpower. And it kind of makes me
wow.
wonder if the anxiety component is somehow connected to which it sort of maybe would
Could
be.
be.
Empathy does seem to be closely related to your level of observation. Because if you're oblivious to your environment, you're not going to be very empathetic, right?
Mhm. True.
So
Yeah.
probably
And see, and plus, and well, see, and then there's two, like, see, well, it's, see, and this is kind of going, back to the psychic things as well, So there's, like, so say for me, for example, I'm an intuitive empath, which means I'm able to feel other people's energies, and and I can feel their, like, what their, their emotions, and how, if they come over, I could, so, and that's why I don't go anywhere most of the time, is because I could literally, like, if I go outside, or for anybody that comes around, it's like I feel like everything that's going on with them, and it's overwhelming. But then there's also, I mean, there's 9 different empath types that there is. Well, one of them actually is the dark empaths, and they don't have empathy. As to where other empaths, it focuses so well. Actually, I mean, it's not that they don't have it; it's that they twist it and they manipulate their empathy to get what they want, basically. So they're using it in a self, as in it just, and so that it's all only about them. So, and that's why other empaths, everybody will try to say that other empaths, that they are narcissists. No, they're not. Dark empaths, those are the ones that are like narcissists. But the other empaths, I mean, you've got emotional empaths, and like me, I'm an intuitive empath. Both of us, I've got probably one of the most people that's got probably the most empathy in the world for everybody else. So I mean, But yeah, I think empathy does play, it does play a big part in, a lot of things like that.
Yeah. I don't know what type of empath I am, but I definitely know that I'm an empath because I have way too many feelings.
I feel like you would probably be an emotional empath, probably.
What's an
Can you,
emotion?
like, if you've got, well, like if you, so an emotional empath, what they do is they like literally take on other people's emotions. So, like, say if you were to walk into a room, and everybody in the room's mad, you're likely going to end up mad. If you walk into a room and everybody's happy, then you're gonna, you'll be happy. If you walk into a room that's sadness, you're gonna likely be sad. You take on other people's emotions and you feel like what they're feeling.
That might be. That could be. I mean, that's definitely something to be aware of.
Depends. Well, most common ones are either emotional empaths or intuitive empaths. Intuitive empaths, they basically, they're, they get a lot of their feelings and their where they know is coming from their intuition and things like that. Like, so it's like they're like gut intuition type people. And as to where, like how they feel people's energy and they connect with people's energy. Emotional empaths don't necessarily connect with someone's energy because they are, they're feeling what those emotions are, and then they're taking them on themselves.
Is there an intellectual empath? Because I feel like if there was, then that would be something that I would be. Because
Well, there are plant empaths, there's animal empaths, there's also dream empaths, and then there's one that's called uh Coyote or Coyote. Yeah, we can do that empath quiz after we get off of here if you want to. We'll just see what kind you are. Yeah, it's Hayoko or Hayoka. And then there's also, well, there's a physical empath. Now those are like medical empaths kind of, where um it's like they can feel like the physical condition of someone else. Like, so, like, say if somebody's coming around you and they've got the stomach flu, you'll be able to detect that they've got the stomach flu from,
oh,
yeah, it's pretty neat. Yeah.
that's interesting.
Um, it is very interesting. And this one right here though, okay, empath. Those actually they view and live their lives unconventionally, but like so they're basically like spiritual in nature and things like that. But so basically what they do is they can feel and sense the opposite side of you, your dark side of you, and they can actually draw it out into the open and basically show you that dark side of you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. Yeah, they say that is the most powerful type of empath. But at the same time, I'm not sure. I don't know. Then there's also super empaths. Super empaths. So it's like they're the narcissist worst nightmare because they basically what they do is they harbor traits from all the empaths. Like they have different traits from all other empaths, and they have a very keen core sense of like identity and stuff. So they're able to set boundaries with people as to where other empaths can't. They have a hard time setting boundaries with anybody. It's just very difficult for them. And then, of course, then there's dream empaths where they get gain their intuitive know-how and stuff like that. They get that in their dreams. So
Okay.
they tend to have like dream visions and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm actually doing development with a dream empath right now. It's pretty fascinating.
I had a couple other factoids that I wanted to share, if that's okay for
Sure.
the
Yeah.
psychic aspect. And these
Mhm.
again, like these are just details that maybe we could talk about or touch on that I probably hadn't really known. One of them is that, and this is about the Stargate project. A little known technique that was explored by the Stargate project was something called dowsing, and this was using pendulums and rods to locate people or objects remotely. It was less famous than remote viewing, but it was also part of the CIA's broader set of experiments on psychic detection.
Mhm.
There was another one too, and then we can talk about these two. There was one called the Soviets' investment into psychotronics. It actually led to the development of devices such as the LIDA machine, the LIDA machine. It was reportedly it emitted low frequency electromagnetic waves to influence brainwave activity. The machine was initially designed to calm psychiatric patients, but it raised alarms in the West as a potential tool for mind control. And then the last one that I was going to share too, real quick, is in the late 1970s, the US intelligence agencies were reportedly armed when Soviet journals began discussing advances in they were alarmed. I'm sorry. They were alarmed when the Soviet journals began discussing advances in what they called biophysical research, implying that they had made significant strides in using electromagnetic fields to affect thought patterns. So it's interesting that they call it biophysical and we call it parapsychology.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like they make it seem like it's just a legitimate part of human,
Right.
whereas we make it sound like it's like pseudoscience, just extra.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that was kind
Um,
of
the thing about and it so now what did it say about the dowsing rods and the pendulum though? It said that it was used they were using it as
they were using that to locate people and objects remotely. So somehow, and it just gave me that bit of information. We'd have to probably look into it further, but it was called dowsing,
well,
DOW.
I mean, I was just trying to figure out how they would have done that because that's not like I don't see how that would. So let me here. I'll do like a little experiment for you. So, for example, I don't have dowsing rods, but I do know what they are and I do know how they work. They basically work just like, but I do have a and the thing about them now, so the way that they work, so you can tell you when you first get them, you charge them and you charge them with your energy is basically what you do. I usually will hold mine or, put it in my, where it's touching my skin. So anyways, and it knows that so whenever when you're showing it how to do, you will tell it, this way is yes. And then, you'll clear it and then you'll say, this way is no. And then, so you'll clear it. Okay, so if I say, okay, is Jennifer's, say, and then wait, hang on, let me see if I can make, okay, stop. And you say, I just stop, like, here, hang on, let's see.
Mhm.
Okay, stop. And see, it'll just stop. So and it stops automatically, now, so say, and then, so if I go, okay, is Jennifer's shirt white today? Sorry, my arm is shaking, but I have to hold it up. So over the camera. Okay, so see. And it's so say that's the way and that's the way it's going, yes. Because it knows to go that way when it's yes. So it goes back and forth. Dowsing rods, the way that they work is that so if you're holding them in your hand like this, right? There's two rods and they kind of go, they go up like this and then they're long and they'll smack you in the face and everything. But
Wow.
I don't have, they will literally, because they swing, is basically what they're doing. So it's kind of like how a pendulum, how it moves. Dowsing rods kind of do the same thing, but it's like they'll go like this, or they will go outwards, or they'll go inwards. And I believe that I think that if they go like this, if they cross each other like this, then that means no. And then the outside goes yes, or it's vice versa. And then if they come inwards, then I guess it's, but I don't really know all that much about dowsing rods. But I do know that I've watched a friend of mine. She uses her dowsing rods. That's what I was trying to say though, is that, so, I mean, I don't know, so say I wanted to use my pendulum to say, okay, so it knows yes or no answers. What I'm saying is both of them they know yes or no answers. Like they know yes, they know no, and they know.
Right.
But if I'm going, okay, so it has to be a yes, no, or maybe question. So if I'm going to go, okay, where is Jennifer currently at in the world? It's not moving at all.
Right.
Because it knows it can't answer that because it knows it's not a yes or no answer. So that's what I was just trying to figure out. I was trying to figure out why. I wonder why they would do that I don't know how they were trying. Maybe they were, the way they were wording it, maybe they were wording their questions that they would ask them in yes or no. The only way the only way they would be able to do it would be, they would have to ask it a yes or no question.
It says the process involved a psychic holding a dowsing tool, such as a pendulum, and concentrating on a map or an image of an area. They would rely on subtle, involuntary muscle movements or sensations to indicate where a specific target might be located. The idea was that the dowser's subconscious potentially linked to extrasensory perception, ESP, would guide them toward the correct locations.
Right.
This
So
is
say like if I took, yeah, I could see how that would work. Cause so if I had a map and I went and I held it over the map and I said, does Jennifer live in, with this part of the world? Then, it will start going in the yes direction, or it'll say no in the no direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Yeah. So
That's very interesting.
yeah.
I bet you could.
More about
I
that.
mean, why would so this is my question. Why would they not use that? Like, I mean, why do not use something like that to find missing people? Like, I mean, I mean, I mean, you got all this. I mean, you're worried about where this guy's at for, I mean, who cares where he's at? Like, he's not missing. I mean, he just don't want to be found right now.
Because I bet they don't really consider them missing, do they?
Well, probably not.
They're probably like, that's where we want them to be. So we're not.
But I mean, do you see them on like? I mean, they could use like different things like that to do good, actual good things, and yet I mean, and I know that there has been. There's like, well, I told you about, I had two spirits that had came through, like a couple of weeks ago. One of them is one of those. She's a missing kid from when Helene hit, and I mean, and it's like, and I still, and and the amount of trouble I have had to go through to try to find, like, I mean, because the fact, I'm not talking about with this little girl. No, she was fine. It's the fact that you have to have all this red tape and stuff that you have to get through to be able to even to tell anybody, hey, I have information of where someone's, loved one's 13-year-old child, her body is at, she can't, I mean, things like that, and it's just,
there needs to be a better way to, get that out.
Well, yeah, because I mean, like, everyone's like, well, what, you should go to the authorities and tell them what, like, oh, that I'm a medium, because they're not going to believe me when I do. Chances are they'll try to lock me up, I mean, it's like, and you're going, why, if people have, just because you don't understand something doesn't mean that it's wrong, or doesn't mean that it's scary or bad. Just because you don't understand something, like say psychic abilities, or, because people do, everybody has abilities. Everybody does. Everybody is born with abilities. They just have to unlock them. That's all it is. And it's a matter of it's you have to unlock them, and you do in your own time. Some people do, some people don't. But use those things for good when you're doing these things, when you're, when you're conducting all these projects and stuff. Use those projects for good, or let those people do things for good. Why does everything always got to be so bad and evil and grim all the time?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Yeah. I don't know. All I can hope is that it's been for, a longer term plan,
Hopefully.
that they knew that they needed all this money to do what they need to do to save all of us. I hope, but it does seem like there's a lot of shadow and evil agendas at play. But also, if we're thinking about the yin and the yang, we have to acknowledge and accept that trauma that we went through is what turned us into empaths. It's what heightened our psychic powers. That's, so without the trauma, who would we be?
True. Yeah. And be careful, when you do that, you gotta, they, when you, it's like, to me, it's like, it's the playing with fire thing, like, it's like, have you seen that movie, the Firestarter movie, with that girl, I mean, that's what happens when you try to go and take people that have like certain, like, look at how that played out, and that's not to say, I mean, because I'm pretty sure that people like that little girl probably do exist, I mean, I know that there's people that has actually had, like, there's been kids that's actually like, like say, there was this one little boy I heard about, he was struck by lightning, and actually then after that, he was like, he was able to do stuff with like electricity and things like that. So, I mean, it's like, and I had never heard of that, but it's the same thing, like when a woman, they say that women, have the ability to lift a car if they think that their child is in, danger underneath it or something, so.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd seen my mom do some pretty superhuman things trying to save me as a kid.
I mean, just leave them, my whole thing would just be, if people have abilities, then so what? Don't mess with them. Everybody has these abilities. You just, some have them locked and some are unlocking them, but let them be, and don't, like, I mean. Yeah, I've been going and trying to study them,
I understand too the risk, the national security risk, because we talked about that too. Where let's say I had the power to go into anybody else's home and see their most personal private secrets that they
True.
had, and say I'm a good person and I'm only going to use my powers for good, but then say some people who are
Something makes you
bad
mad.
become my friends and they pretend to be my friends, and subtly over 10 or 15 years they manipulate my mind and socially engineer me to get me to actually be a tool and a weapon for them to use to achieve their own goals. And all the while, I don't even know because I'm being lied to and told that it's for something else. So those things
Right.
I can see very easily how that would be a serious national security threat if, and as it looks like they've been able to prove, that is possible for people to do. So if you have those kind of skills, that does make you a target. It just does.
True.
And the more developed they are, the more of a target it makes you.
Absolutely, it does. Hold on, I gotta.
Okay, so I think this sounds like a really great place for us to end this episode and get ready for our next episode next week. And we want to thank everyone for joining. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and share Minds Unbound with your friends and your family that wants to look beyond the ordinary.
Absolutely, yeah. And I do believe next week's episode is going to be about different things like clandestine and covert operations and things like that. And so, if anybody has any questions, send us your questions to mindsunbound39. mindunbound39 at gmail.com. And please follow all of our social media accounts.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. And thanks for sharing some time here with us. And hopefully, we sparked some different topics with our conversation this week. And if you
And
have,
don't forget our after party too.
yeah, don't forget our after party. That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. See you guys next week. Stay
Bye.
mindful and stay aware and stay awake, please.
Yes.